Ukraine conflict, President Zelensky warns Russia, "We will defend ourselves." To play this video you need to enable JavaScript in your browser. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that Russia could start a major war in Europe any day now, and called on Russians to oppose it. In a late-night address, he said he had unsuccessfully sought talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He said Russia had almost 200,000 troops and thousands of combat vehicles on Ukraine's borders. And switching from Ukrainian into Russian, Mr. Zelensky made an emotional appeal to Russians to reject an attack, saying they were being lied to about Ukraine. "As you attack, it will be our faces you see, not our backs," the Ukrainian president said. It came as Russian troops, ordered into Ukraine's two rebel-held regions, were reportedly edging closer to the border. Moscow said the breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine had asked for military support. Russia has now issued a civil aviation notice warning that it is closing virtually all of eastern Ukrainian airspace on the border with Russia, a monitoring group says. Ukraine has declared a state of emergency and told millions of its citizens living in Russia to return home. The 30-day emergency status allows authorities to adopt heightened security measures, including curfews. Western countries have announced a series of sanctions against Russia since it tore up a 2014-15 peace deal for eastern Ukraine and recognized the so-called People's Republics of Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states. Moscow's claims that troops would be sent in for peacekeeping operations have been rejected by the UN Secretary-General and decried as nonsense by the West. Russia has been backing a bloody armed rebellion in eastern Ukraine for the past 8 years. A senior U.S. defense official on Wednesday said Russian troops were uncoiled and ready to go with a large-scale invasion possible at any moment. Fears of a Russian attack have been rising for months, with more than 150,000 troops massed along Ukraine's borders, according to U.S. estimates. Ukraine's state of emergency was overwhelmingly approved by lawmakers on Wednesday, and is now in force nationwide. It introduces personal document checks, blocks military reservists from leaving the country, bans mass gatherings and places restrictions on radio communication systems. Ukraine earlier said it was ordering its citizens to leave Russia because escalating Russian aggression could limit consular assistance. Ukraine's latest measures came as it was targeted by a large-scale cyber attack on Wednesday, affecting government websites and banks. A minister told Interfax Ukraine news agency that services for several Ukrainian institutions, including the health, security and foreign ministries, were taken offline in a denial of service (DDoS) attack. It is not clear if any Russian troops have yet crossed the border into Ukraine. However, U.S. satellite imagery has highlighted several new troop and equipment deployments in western Russia, and more than 100 vehicles at an airfield in Belarus near Ukraine's border. On Wednesday night, the Kremlin said Donetsk and Luhansk had asked Russian forces for protection, citing what it described as Ukrainian aggression. Separatist leader Denis Pushilin last week accused Ukraine of planning an imminent offensive and ordered an evacuation of civilians. Ukraine said no offensive had been planned, and it later emerged Mr. Pushilin's order had been recorded 2 days earlier. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said his country's interests and security are non-negotiable while insisting that Moscow is open for direct and honest dialogue. No further talks are planned, with France's foreign minister and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken both canceling planned meetings with Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. EU leaders have been invited for an extraordinary summit in Brussels on Thursday to discuss the crisis, while UN Secretary-General António Guterres warned that the world was facing a moment of peril as he called for de-escalation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he will consider cutting off diplomatic ties with Russia altogether over the crisis. Please include a contact number if you are willing to speak to a BBC journalist. Fear and frustration as families leave eastern Ukraine. Why is Putin ordering troops into Ukraine? Putin's Ukraine statement fact-checked. Russia could start major war in Europe, Ukraine. The crushing pain of India's job seekers. Putin's Ukraine statement fact-checked.